Well, hello to those that are joining us for the Get Ahead of the Curve Creative Communications Plan from Golden Shovel. My name is Ron Kresha, and we'll be starting this in just about a minute to 2 minutes. I'm waiting for everyone to log in. We have a high attendance rate and registration rate, so I want to make sure everyone has a chance to get in. So if you need to refill your coffee or maybe send in that last email, now is a great time, and we'll start in about 2 minutes. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get started. I want to welcome everyone to Get Ahead of the Curve Creative Communications Plan from Golden Shovel. This is the fourth in our series of trying to help organizations and individuals think beyond this COVID crisis and get ahead of the curve and look at the recovery. And with that, we're going to be reviewing how to create a communications plan and just some simple things to talk about in doing this. One of the things I want to start off with in marketing strategy, and marketing strategy can be kind of an intimidating word or phrase, and I just want you to know we've just boiled it down here to something simple that you should be able to do just to get you up and running for the next couple of weeks, and then to start thinking beyond that. But before we do that, I want to review just a couple of things. And then I'm also going to be asking everyone to take a poll. So just sit in. This should be about 30 to 35 minutes, and then I'll take questions as they come up. So one of the things that I want to start off with is why Golden Shovel, why we can present this information in a competent fashion. And this is just a bit of a reassurance that we've got 10 years of communication experience in the economic development industry. We have a professional staff of economic development focused designers, writers, programmers. Currently, we've helped over 160 communities. We've created an informational video campaign for Haiti, for example, have reached out international into Canada and other markets, and are starting to work with them, especially in the area of virtual reality. We've been moving into virtual reality, which actually is kind of the next step for communities in this process of how we're going to communicate with social distancing and maybe relaxed travel. So we bring all that to the table. And what we've really found is that our team is just competent, professional, and frankly amazing. I try to pat them on the back a lot because they just really bring their soul to work when they work with communities. And I wanted to share that. That's where our experience and competence comes from. Just a reality check, and I've done this on all the webinars, but I think it's always good just to review that this is really happening, and we do need to continue to work towards the future. I think so many communities that we work with and people are talking about, well, when we can get back to the normal, we can get back to the past. I think that we are in fact building the next generation. There is an opportunity here, and it's an opportunity to go forward and not an opportunity to go back. Economic developers now have the ability and the responsibility to be part of, and in many cases, be the solution. I see that more than I've seen that in the past, where people that are involved with economic development or community leaders, they're really going to be asked to shoulder this and this is going to be important. This is going to be something that communities are going to be looking for. You're not alone. There's resources, and our webinars and our information want to let you know you can do this and you need to do this, and we're happy to help. So let's talk about communicating in a time of crisis. When we first started this webinar 4 weeks ago, the first thing we kicked off was, what should you be communicating in a time of crisis? And the answer is yes. Don't stop communicating. Keep your messages simple. Be authentic, honest, and factual. Don't stop communicating at all, because right now you actually have to work harder so people will remember your message when the crisis is over. 5, 6, 7 weeks ago, people were watching cat videos. Now they're looking for answers and solutions. They're looking for ways to move beyond the current situation into what the next phase is going to look like. There's three stages that I've been watching communications and communities go through. The first one was the panic stage. I think when the crisis first came through in January, February, and the early parts of March, we were watching it globally. It was coming through from China, and it was moving across the globe. And then somewhere around March 1st, a little after March, Italy really went through their crisis. And that created this time of uncertainty. Information changed all the time. There was this distorted thinking and shock. And really, I think a lot of people were just panicked of, okay, what does this really mean? Is it a 2-week? Is it a 4-week? What's it going to look like economically? The federal stimulus? All of that started coming very, very fast. And I think what we observed was there was this shock. People just stopped for a minute to process everything. Now we're moving into preparation. I'm seeing communities and leaders, they've accepted this is happening. They know that they have to plan things out. Future paths are starting to emerge, and people are looking ahead going, okay, what steps do I need to take, and how do I prepare for what's going to be next? I mentioned in here, this is an easy time to settle. And that's something people have to be aware of, because the original shock is over. People are catching up. They're taking a breath. They're going, okay, I can do this. We can get through this. But this is a time when complacency can settle in, when people start to go, okay, things are starting to move now. Maybe I don't have to do anything, and maybe we'll just get to the end of this. That is the wrong approach. Now is the time to do some preparation, to think about how you can change some new habits and promote. As we move into the promotion phase, which I think communications are going to have to be up and rolling for the new phase, you're going to quit talking about the COVID situation in probably 2 to 4 weeks and start talking about your communities again, and start promoting to remote workers, looking for businesses. All of that will come back into play. It's just going to be different. There'll be new habits established. Audiences will look to those who communicated early. As we talked about earlier, you want to be communicating now, because there will be a listening for you in a couple of weeks when people start to say, okay, you were communicating through the COVID crisis. Now we trust your information. I'm now ready to accept new information, and your audience will pivot to whatever that will be. And so we're going to help build that communication plan out. So before we go any further, I'm just going to take a quick poll, and it'll take me just a minute to launch this poll. It's a 5-question poll, and what I would ask is everyone just quickly fill this out, and then we'll share the results, and it'll give us a sense of where the audience is at. So I'm going to launch it now. And that poll should be going right now. And so on your screen, if you could just answer those 5 questions. And there we go. Starting to see some results come through. Just waiting on a couple more. See if we can squeak in a couple more results. Looks like about 75% of you have had a chance to vote. And I'll leave it open for 10 more seconds here. We'll just do a 2-minute time slot. All right, I'm going to end that poll. Okay, so let's go ahead and share those results. So let's go ahead and just walk through this and see how everyone is. First of all, the first question was, when was the last time you updated your communication plan? So 43% of you 3 months ago, 18% of you 6 months ago, 4% 12 months, and then 10% of you greater than 12 months. So when was the last time you visited your website or social media from the perspective of your audience? And the question here is, when you visit it, think of how an audience member interacts, and are they getting the information that you present? 89% of you said that happened 3 months ago, 4% 6 months, 4% said 12 months ago, and 4% said never have visited it from the perspective of your audience. What are your preferred sources of information? 39% websites, 39% email, so that's interesting. 21% social media, and 0 for print. The one thing I bring this up, so based on those results and how you answered, the question I ask is, are you using your own preferred method? So in other words, if you use website and email, are you using email newsletters effectively as well? Many times people forget to use the tools that they're using to send it out, even though they're receiving it. So that's good. Why don't you have a consistent communication plan and publishing schedule? 11% of you answered this one. Honestly, I do and don't need this webinar. So I will try to at least be entertaining to you, but that's good that some of you already have one. 4% said there's too much time involved. 68% said understaffed. 7% said not a priority, and 25% of you said I really don't know. And I see this actually more often than even the 25%, which is I think it's just other things get in the way, and it can easily be put off, said, oh, I can get this tomorrow, but then you have everything that pops up for today. The last question, when do you hope to have your communication plan completed and publishing content? 36% would like to see that done in a month. 43% would like to see that done in 3 months, 14 in 6 months, and 7% of you, brutally honest, probably never. So thank you for taking the survey. I think it gives a little bit of a context of where we all are. I hope that through this webinar that I can present to you a very simple plan that you could actually just get up and running and start to feel some success. So let's go ahead and move through. The first thing I want you to think about is the cost of inaction. So for those of you that responded probably never, or really not sure when you could get to a communication plan, think about this. We as humans are very good at considering what might go wrong if we try something new. What we don't often consider is the atrocious cost of the status quo, not changing anything. Very well-known speaker that I follow, Tim Ferriss. This I try to think about a lot, is what if I had done what I wanted to do 6 months ago, what could have happened today? And I start to look at that cost of inaction. What am I missing? And so I just bring that up as we ease into moving beyond the panic side of communication, moving into this time of, is this our new normal? There is that complacency. And I just would caution you, try to move past that and think about preparing for your next phase. So let's talk about creating a simple communication plan. And I really want to stress simple. This is not creating that 75-page plan. This is not doing a board review. This is not doing a survey of all your community. This is really, can you put together a quick plan to get you up and running that you can start and then refine for later? And the components that generally we put into a communication plan, and I boiled this down, is you want to do a quick audit. Set yourself some goals, find out who your audience is, Write, write, and write. You do need to write content, create a timeline, and then measure results. So let's just step through these, and at the end of this webinar, we'll have some questions, and then I'm also going to send out a template that will reiterate all the information I shared today. It's just a template you can follow, and my goal would be, it would really make my day if a week from now, a couple of you sent an email and said, hey, you know what, I finally got a communication plan done. It's just 4 weeks, but at least I'm started. That would tell me that something effective happened today. So let's look at it. Let's look at an audit. You need to audit because you need to look at where you've been before you can go forward. So just keep it simple. Look at the communications related to attracting key audiences and or new customers. And I use customers in the terms of, are you going after remote workers? Are you going after businesses? How are you attracting those new folks? Think about how you communicated. Earlier in the poll, many of you said you use a website and email. So how can you use those tools to effectively go after audiences? Analyze the competitive landscape. Take a moment to look around at other organizations or other communities like yourself and just see what they're doing well, see what they're not doing well. Just take a moment to assess where are the opportunities that I could talk about that maybe somebody else isn't talking about. Research and develop audience personas. These are very simple. When you think of an audience, so let's say that you're going after, I'll use an example of a remote worker. You now want to attract more remote workers, people that in this time of COVID could move to your community, work remotely, they could work from their home. Don't think of the audience, think of a specific person. Put a name to them. A lot of times when we do an exercise, we'll say, this is Mary, AKA remote worker. Here's all of Mary's attributes. Mary has a family, Mary has this, and you walk through and then you start to build that persona out so you can directly speak to Mary or whoever you're trying to communicate to. But think in terms of a specific person, not a whole audience. And that will really help you have a conversation with a member of an audience rather than these broad and global things that can often get us hung up. Identify strategies, tactics, and messaging tailored to the personas. So you're speaking directly to that audience member. You're really just trying to have that conversation with that person, and that will be picked up by other people in the audience. Help determine clear-cut communication goals and metrics for success. One of the biggest recommendations I can give right now is be clear and be specific. I often see messaging that's very broad because we don't want to leave anybody out. I would actually put that on its head and flip it around and say, you can't communicate with everybody, so just figure out who you want to talk to and don't worry about the people that you may be leaving out because they're probably on the fringes and you're probably trying to over communicate. So just be simple. We have this, we have these assets, we have this opportunity, and be very, very specific, and that will help you move the needle forward in your communication plan. And then recommend a strategic path forward. Just kind of think a little bit. Am I going to do better in social media? Am I going to do better with my website? Am I going to do better in my newsletters? Just think forward and think of how you could communicate directly in those paths. Okay, so let's just look at some simple tools. This is probably one of the most effective tools I use in all the strategy meetings that we have. It just is effective, it's simple, and it works. Put a grid together and just ask yourself, or if you have a small team or if you're working with other communities, what should we start doing today that we're not doing right now? What should we stop doing today that we just need to absolutely stop? And what can we continue doing? And a lot of times this matrix will put you right where you need to be with your audit. So think about that. What do you need to start doing right now that you're not doing, that you hear people say, oh, I wish you'd do this, I wish you'd do this. So what are those things? And then the real important one that I pull out is, what do you need to stop doing today that you're doing that's causing you not to put an effective plan out there? And then again, what should you continue doing? And if you start with this simple matrix, you'll start to build a formula and a plan that actually you can take forward. Then write some SMART communication goals. And be specific. If you're not familiar with the SMART, it's a well-known system and an acronym. You can look it up, but it basically says be specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time specific. So be specific. What do you exactly want to do? I want to produce 2 success stories and blog posts promoting remote worker attraction to our community. Okay? Is it measurable? Each content piece will receive 10 shares, 25 likes, and 100 page views. Is it obtainable? Ask yourself, is it obtainable? Because a lot of times we make these goals that are so far out there that it's almost too unrealistic, and then it becomes a burden to write. So just nail it down. The content pieces will be 750 words with relevant keywords written by X person. Nail it down and make it relevant. These content pieces will apply to June and August. I'm not trying to do this for 12 months. I'm just trying to pick a specific period, and that's when this is going to be applied to. And then time specific, work it backwards. If you want to publish in 3 weeks, then work backwards. We're going to refine and publish on schedule in 3 weeks. On week 2, we're going to do an interview and write the drafts. Week 1, we're going to spend some time with some idea generation. Be very, very specific, and if you write those goals, it'll help you get to that communication plan. Audience. Think about the audience. So we've already talked about the persona. We want to talk about Mary in an audience, or Bob, or whoever that person would be. But when you think about your audience, think about it from 3 points of view. How do you believe you are perceived? In other words, if you're in a community, how do your community members perceive your organization or your message? Then ask yourself, how do others outside the community perceive you? And then ask yourself, how should you be perceived? A lot of times there's distortion in those 3. And what we actually find out is, what you want to know is, what is the story your community tells about itself? What is the story others tell about your community? And what is the story that needs to be told about your community? And you can do this with just some very simple questions. Talk to some people that you trust, or talk to some people that may have come into the community, and just ask them, hey, when you hear others talk about our community, or before you got here, what did you hear? And then talk to other people who've been in the community for a long time and say, hey, what do you think this community is? What do you think we are? And from there, you'll be able to gauge what should you be. And that's where you need to be, is where all 3 of those intersect, because that can be your most effective message. Now you need to write. Once you have your plan together, you put some goals together, you've identified who your audience is, you need to write, and make it simple. Just write an article or a success story, and then create some social media posts related to the content. Make sure there are attention-getting headlines and images. One of the things that I recommend is you look closely at your headlines and you look at your images, because you can write great content pieces, but if you have a headline that's just really blah, nobody will read it. So I actually recommend creating up to 3 or 4 headlines for every content piece you do, and play with them. And then you'll see what different results you get. Promote and have others comment and share. When you promote these, ask your community members, hey, please go like this, please go share it, and more importantly, comment on it. One of the best ways to grow a post organically is to have interaction. In fact, the studies say if there's 1 or 2 comments or likes or shares within the first hour of it being posted, it has a greater chance of getting shared. So make sure you identify 6 or 8 evangelists or close friends, and just send them an email and say, hey, I'm about to post this on Facebook, or I'm about to send this out. Would you please like and share on it, and put a comment? That will help gain some attention. Create a timeline. After you create your goals, after you create your posts, you've now created 6 social media posts that will support that. Lay it out there. What's it going to look like on week 1? When am I going to post it? Morning, afternoon, late afternoon, evening? A lot of times people don't put a grid together and they bunch everything up. So everything posts Monday morning. or everything posts Tuesday afternoon. Spread it out so that your audience has a chance to see it. And don't worry about reposting material. So one of the things that you may do is you may put an article out on social media on Monday morning, and that same article may post Thursday afternoon. Why? Because your audience is viewing your social media channels at different times. So give different audience members a chance to see things. One thing you might do that we do all the time is we'll post an article on Monday morning, then we'll use a different headline and post it Wednesday afternoon, and then maybe a different headline yet Saturday evening. Why Saturday and Sunday evening? Because that's when a lot of people sit down and just read for enjoyment, and that's a good time to just post content that your casual readers may come across. If you're posting all the time during the week for business, then you kind of get that business perception. But if you make your content very light, very conversational, maybe tell a success story, tell a story about somebody that had a unique experience in your community, go ahead and post those in the evenings when people, after they've eaten their last meal, or maybe they're just settling in for the evening and they're just reading internet just to read pass the time. That's when your light content may come across to them, and you'll be surprised how many people are linking, liking and sharing your content in the evenings. So don't just think it's all business that I have to post 9 o'clock Monday morning, Tuesday at 1 o'clock. Play around with the schedule a little bit, play around with some headlines. Measure results. Just use a simple little grid. Create a little spreadsheet and just look periodically at your content. So I put this content title out, I put these social media posts. How many page views did it get? How many likes on Facebook? How many shares on LinkedIn? How many Twitter shares? And then put little comments. Did people comment? You don't have to build a whole statistical model. You don't have to build a regression. You don't have to do all of that. Just track the numbers so you can see trends. And what you'll find is, oh, these words and headlines worked, these did not. And if you just start to look at those broad trends, you can quickly point out what works and what doesn't work. Rate yourself. Okay, when you're all done, now you've done this, and again, as I send out this presentation and I'll send out the template for you to use, I would hope that in an hour and a half you could have gone through this and just quickly have everything ready to go and start writing articles. But when you do get done, rate yourself or have your team rate you and say, okay, how did we respond? Did we actually put communication out quick enough? How did we address the basic information that our audience or our stakeholders wanted? And how can we do it better? And then in a time of this crisis, and I add this here, I always ask communities and organizations, talk about your humanity and your empathy. Did you actually use that? Did you respond like you cared? And I shouldn't say it that way. Did you respond with care? Because I think everybody does care. And I want to make sure we don't miss that. Too often we just send out sterilized information, but we want to make sure we send out emotion and say, hey, we understand in times like this, this is what you may be going through. Here's some things to help. And then, did you clearly explain what happened, what is happening, and what will happen next? Let people know that you're removing some of that uncertainty and you're helping them out. And then, if applicable, always ask yourself the hard question. Did you make a mistake and did you own it? Did you send something out or did you not follow up on something you shouldn't have? And you let people know, hey, you know what? This didn't happen. We're sorry about that. We're going to do better in the future. It's always good to acknowledge what happened if there was an error. We all make them, and we're all human. And maybe you didn't, and that's great. But don't forget to look to see if you did. Sometimes we'll step into a community where somebody has sent out some materials that they didn't mean to send out, or it was incorrect, and we're trying to unravel something that happened. And the first thing you do is you acknowledge it. This happened. Don't pretend it didn't, and then move through it. Then, when you've made it through all of that, go back to here. What should you start doing? What should you stop? And what should you continue? It's always good to do this audit exercise at the beginning and the end, because after you've walked through your audience, your messaging, you've thought about some articles to write, then what happens is you now will have a different perception on what you should start, stop, and continue. And then compare the front and the back information and to see how that works. When all of that is done, you can always build a bigger plan. So I know that was a quick webinar. I know the plan is pretty simple, but it should just get you a 4-week plan going. And like I said, at the end of this webinar, later today and early tomorrow morning at the latest, you'll get this presentation, you'll get a quick template on how to do all this, and then you'll be able to move that on your own. If you want some help, we're always here. If you're looking at a more comprehensive, hey, we want to build a website out, we want to build a full strategy and engage our audience, and that can always happen later, just know that those are things that we can help you with. But otherwise, I hope I've given you just a very quick plan that you can build a strategy out. So with that, I'm going to take some questions. I'll just stay online here. If you'd like to get a hold of us, or if there's someone at Golden Shovel you'd like to talk to, this is the person you reach out to. But otherwise, as I promised, your time is valuable, and I wanted to be very quick. So I can sit around for a couple questions. I'll stay online here for 4 or 5 minutes. Otherwise, I'll send the materials out, and you'll have those in your inbox for yourself to review when you'd like. So I want to thank everyone for being here. So one question that we just had was interested in the personas. How many different ones are practical? When you do a comprehensive strategy, we try to do as many as we can, 6 to 12. I would say for putting a quick 4-week plan together like this, even up to 3, and just do a quick interview with a couple different folks and just ask them some questions and just get an idea of how you might converse with that person, say if you were at the coffee shop. So start with 3 personas, that's probably enough, and then you can build out more later. But a great place to do this is just start with 3. So the next question, sorry, I want to make sure I wasn't muted. So the next question was, do you recommend not mixing communication personas? I think the right answer there is there's going to be overlap. There's going to be, for example, people have business interests as well as their social interests. And so it's okay to look at, say, for example, Mary as a resident versus Mary, the entrepreneur or business owner. And there will be some overlap, and there will be some places that the message will resonate on both sides. So I think it's okay to realize that there's that overlap and not worry about whether or not you're mixing communication personas. I think the most important thing is when you think about personas and you think about the individuals is think how would you have that natural conversation with them instead of that forced conversation. Great questions. By the way, thanks for the feedback. There's some wonderful feedback, and I'm glad you're finding this helpful. All right. Well, we are coming up on 40 minutes, and yes, this will be available. The last question I received is this available for download online? We will actually send this to your email. We'll send you the links that you can get. You can review the presentation, as well as there will be a document that you can follow, a how-to document. And I hope this is very simple. I hope it's very helpful, and I wish you all well as you're trying to work through this communication and getting us on the other side of the recovery. So thanks for joining us today.